So hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 123 of Level Up. 60 minutes, of course, of live Q&A, where your questions really do drive the show. Now, Ella and Shanice are patiently waiting over in the chat. So please do introduce yourself, let them know your name and, of course, the city from where you're joining. We will post a link into the chat for you to vote up the questions that you'd most like answered, and also for you to add your own. And I think actually they've already done that. I can see Shanice is already active over there. So that's great. Now, if your question is selected, excuse me, your name will, of course, appear in our credits at the end of the show. So do get your questions in early and stay with us to see all of that happen. Today, we're going to be talking about how to manage agile projects. And of course, many of you may well be thinking, well, hang on a moment, all projects are to some extent agile. So what is it that's so special that warrants a whole episode? Whether it's delivering faster maybe, or creating better products, reducing time to value perhaps, we're all facing the same kinds of challenges. And this whole episode is really dedicated to help you, if you're managing the project, to deliver on that kind of mission. So to make sense of it all, and to help us out with some practical hints and tips, we've got an amazing panel. So let's jump in and meet them all. Dianne Rampadarath is, of course, the Assistant Director of the Public Service of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and she's responsible for the implementation of the Agricultural Development Programme, and of course, a regular Level Up contributor. So welcome back, Dianne. Lovely to see you.
Thank you very much, Nick. And thanks, Nick and APMG International for the opportunity to appear as a panelist again. So in our fast-paced global environment, organizations are constantly looking for ways to achieve a sustainable competitive advantage. And the use of the Agile methodology and principles can help them achieve this. So I'm looking forward to a very interesting show. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Dianne is our sustainability champion, and she does that really, really well. So thank you so much, Dianne. Johann Botha joins us again today, his first appearance in 2023 on Level Up. But he is, of course, a digital change provocateur, which I think is a fantastic phrase to be able to have on your CV. I wish I'd thought of it first, but I didn't. So welcome back to him. He's, of course, an author and a podcaster whose professional career has touched the lives of many through training, coaching, and consulting. Always a pleasure. Welcome back, Johann. Great to see you.
Yeah, it's a nice way of saying that I'm causing trouble wherever I go, Nick. So the idea is to stimulate thought, and sometimes well, at least the way that I know to do it well is to stir up trouble.
Excellent. Okay, so one person's trouble is, of course, another person's value, because it makes you stop and think a little bit. So that's great. So we'll touch on that. And as project managers, we're often on the naughty step with somebody, aren't we? This kind of comes with the territory, I think. Luca Ingianni is, of course, the co-founder over at Vempio, where he focuses on DevOps, principally, training, coaching, consultancy, and so on. He's a published author and podcaster, of course, in his own right, and a regular contributor, not just to Level Up, but also to the wider Agile community. So welcome back to Level Up, Luca. Lovely to see you.
Thank you for inviting me back here. I'm really excited for today's conversation.
Right, excellent. Thank you so much. Tomasz Manugiewicz returns to the panel today. And I think it's fair to say, Tomasz, from your early career as a programmer in financial services, where you were thinking up new ways in which to deliver products and services to clients, he's lived and worked in many different countries, including Austria and Canada and Germany. But he is a self-confessed Agile enthusiast. I think that's probably fair to apply that badge to you. Welcome back to Level Up, Tomasz. Lovely to see you today.
Thank you very much, Nick, for the warm invitation. Yes, I can tell about myself that I'm an Agile enthusiast. I started my journey in 2009 with Agile and Scrum. And nowadays I see that Agile is becoming more and more popular. So I'm keen to talk with you about what does it mean for us, this situation when Agile is so popular, how we can benefit in our companies from that. So looking forward to the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Completing our panel today is Falko Werner. He's the co-founder and agile coach over at Werner Consulting, where he really does help leaders double the effectiveness of their teams in a matter of a few weeks. Falko's podcast is broadcast, I think it's mostly in German episodes, but I have listened to some of the English ones. So thank you, Falko, for broadcasting in my language as well, as my German's not so good. So please do check that out, everybody, as well as the other podcasters who are on our panel today. Falko, welcome back to Level Up. Lovely to see you, my friend.
Hey, Nick. Hey, audience. Thanks for inviting me again. Looking forward to this interesting episode about Agile and projects. That's kind of my home turf. I like to be, and looking forward to the questions we are getting. I think some of them might be from me, so don't worry. I just wanted to get a few of the other panelists' views on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a key feature, I think, of Level Up that we all learn from each other. And so we do have a really nice mix of questions already submitted, actually. And we're looking forward to some more live questions from our live audience, who I'll come to in a moment. Let's also introduce Suchitra, who is our question master for today. And she's joining us from Bangalore in India. So welcome back, Suchitra. How are you?
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to be back again, and Happy New Year to our viewers. Looking forward to asking the questions for today's episode.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a very kind of unspoken thing, isn't it? When do you stop saying Happy New Year to people? And in my life, it gets even more complicated, of course, because we have a strong presence in North Asia. And so the Lunar New Year comes up at the end of January, early February. And so we start all over again, kind of at that point. So I kind of feel Easter is my absolute cutoff. But there we go. It is brilliant to see so many people online from Australia. Great that you're joining us, and a much more pleasant time of day in Australia as we head towards the evening time, actually. So thank you for giving us some of your time if you're joining from there. Angus, great to have you joining from Dubai. And we've got people all around the world from the warmness of the Southern Hemisphere all of the way to the chilly Northern Europe. And it is actually quite chilly. I think this week it's going to get a little colder where we are as well. All right, very good. Now then, without further ado, let's move on if we can. Suchitra, let's take our first question.
To start us off, our first question is from our panelist, Falko. What is an agile project?
Now, I think to your point, Johann, okay, I think this is one of those provocative kind of questions. So why don't we put you, all right, in the spotlight first and give us your thoughts, and then we'll hear from Dianne.
I actually don't like talking about agile projects, because for me, agile is just a way of continuously improving and developing products. So it can be a product management way of doing product management. It can be a way of doing continuous improvement. I think if we call it a project methodology, we bring bad behavior and ways of doing things with.
I think you're right. I think certainly on LinkedIn at the moment, it's a kind of a debate. It's almost like in the UK, we have a product called Marmite. I think in Australia, it might be called Vegemite. In other countries, other products like this are available. Even licorice, I can't understand why people don't like licorice, but even licorice in its natural form can polarize opinion really easily. Some people love it, some people hate it. And Agile Projects on LinkedIn, it would appear you either love it or you hate it. You have to be a purist or not. You know, it's kind of binary, really. Dianne, your thoughts on this? What is an Agile project before we come back to Falko?
So some of the characteristics that can help to define what an agile project is one that's very responsive to customer needs and very flexible so that you can adapt the final product to what the customer is asking for, as well as one where the team leads are able to develop their own milestones as opposed to those which are imposed from a top-down approach. So an agile project is one which is implemented from a bottom-up approach.
Yeah, it's certainly that kind of iterative nature of it, isn't it? So that you can actually do things and you have a more devolved decision-making process, I think, to some extent, within it. Luca, what are your thoughts on this before we revert to Falko?
Yeah, so I think the most crucial aspect of all of this is to realize that at its heart, Agile is really about risk management, right? You're working certain kinds of projects in this sort of dual uncertainty of product uncertainty. You don't quite know what you should be building, and let's call it technical uncertainty. You don't quite know how you should be building it. And Agile is just an approach, a point of view, if you like, to try to protect you against this double uncertainty, or to let you make the most of this uncertainty. That's all it is. And all of the rest, stand-ups, etc. That's just an exercise to get to this goal of insulating you against that risk.
It's interesting, because you've led with one of the key problems that agility in project management is all about solving, which is mitigating and managing risks. They might begin as issues. Some of those issues go away. Others translate into real and present danger risks, that you're then trying to mitigate and manage and so on. And I think that those rituals, if I can use that word, those rituals within Agile of the daily, of the high frequency, of the short-term deliveries of functionality, if you're developing a product, those sprints, if you like, and those daily stand-ups, those rituals become very, very important as a mechanism by which you can do something. But by themselves, they're not the end game. You're quite right. Falko, how much of a dog's breakfast have we now made of the question that you posed, or are we producing a meal which is both appealing and appetizing for you in our answers so far? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think if we start off with classical project management projects, you try to improve something, you try to develop a new product or thing like that, and in that environment you try to do risk management, to learn, to iterate. And there you start with things like the Scrum or other agile methodologies to introduce that into such an environment to achieve those goals, like learning, like improving during the sometimes quite long project runtimes, and to have the advantages of a planned project with a budget, with maybe some an in-front design, but still during the longer phases of the project, it's usually the development and the stabilization phase, where you iterate, where you learn, where you improve and get early feedback from stakeholders, from holders maybe even, or other people who invested into this project, and kind of get the advantages of both an already financed, budgeted project with a stable team, and approaches into one environment. It might be a start of a transition for a whole product line or product development, might be a start of a transition of a full organization. That's at least what I experience, even with big corporations. When they started their agile journey into becoming an agile business, they started with some phases in the project management, in the project development and product development approaches to iterate, to learn, and to improve. And from that point of view, that's what I understand as an agile project. And I think that combines what the other panelists said as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I very much agree with that. In reality, I think what we're seeing in real life is that each organization is adopting Agile and blending it with their own internal methods and approaches. Some are in highly regulated industries, and that influences how they actually implement, as we know as consultants. Others have a more of a kind of purist kind of approach. So it's quite interesting how that sort of blend of different methods and practices all come together. So Ao, lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution as well. Valuable products, I totally agree with that. You know, ultimately projects need to be able to deliver value back to organization, and phrasing it in that way, 5 key words for our New Year's resolutions. Okay, I might write that down on a little card, you know, for myself to use at work as well. Alexandra, thank you so much for a regular, actually, viewer over from Poland. Thank you very much for joining. And a new location today, Turkan. Great to see you. Welcome from Kurdistan over in Iraq. Lovely to have you joining us and joining in the debate, as is Suchitra from Bangalore in India. Of course, a garden city after our own heart. So really, really good to have you. And of course, as a Lancastrian, now not everybody will understand this, but in the north of England, where it's quite narrow, we have Lancashire on the left-hand side, where I am from. And we have Kirsty, who's joining us from Halifax. Unless Kirsty is in Halifax in Canada, in which case you're up in the middle of the night, Kirsty. And I applaud you for that, my dear. But actually, I'm guessing that you might be in the UK. And finally, on our route around the world, we've got Daud from Zimbabwe, of course, in the continent of Africa. So look, now then, folks, great that you've introduced yourselves. Next step for everybody who's online is put a question in, please. All right, type your question in for the panel. All right. And Ella and Shanice, of course, will pick it up and bring it into the program. Let's move on if we can. Suchitra, let's take our next question.
We have a question from Justin. What is the most common challenge you encounter when managing an agile project?
All right. Okay, Thomas, start us off on this, then we'll hear from Johann.
Yeah, definitely. My pleasure to answer this question because I see this challenge many, many times. This challenge is customer involvement. So we all speak about closing feedback loops, very frequent feedback to the customer. Customer would like to have great product which is aligned with the business needs. That's sometimes they are asking for much more cheaper product as well. But they usually, my experience, that they don't understand that it means also hard work for themselves. So they need to attend some ceremonies. They need to see the review. They need to provide the feedback every 2 weeks. And this is the challenging part when we start bringing customer to the table and they say, oh, okay, we would like to have the Agile project, but we don't have time to take care of it, you know. So we set up like a product owners and so on to have the proxy to the customer. But real value in Agile project is real customer, real investor on the table every 2 weeks. So that's the big challenge.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There should be no absentee participants on an Agile project. The closer that you work together as a team, the better the outcome. Generally, I would say, generally, that is absolutely the case. All right. Thank you very much indeed, Thomas. Let's go to Johann next, and then we'll hear from Luca.
Yeah, I think the big challenge is for everybody to realize that it means quite a big difference in the way that everybody in the organization behaves. So customers tend to still expect certain things at deadlines and be able now to introduce new requirements all of the time. The reality is if you add something new, something's going to give. And I also quite like the fact that Tomasz highlighted the fact that your customer must be intimately involved. So we tend to say to people that we're involved, as organizations that we're involved in, that product owners should be on the business side of the fence. I don't like this issue of a product owner being a proxy for the business. Product owner must be the business, and then slowly but surely, things are starting to change. But it's a big adjustment. My gosh, I had a weekend of Afrikaans. Now I can't speak English for everybody in the beginning.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Edith. It's interesting, isn't it, when we have a little break from one thing and we immerse ourselves in a different culture and a different language and so on, we then have to start kind of reimagining and rethinking again in our second language. So thank you so much. Luca, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Dianne.
Yeah, so I think that the previous two panelists have made excellent points, especially Tomasz when he said that it really is about gathering this feedback. That sounds like a no-brainer. Everybody says, yes, very good idea. We should totally do that. And then they don't. So that is one of the big challenges that I see in practice, where everybody kind of agrees what the good idea is and then just somehow doesn't do it. And I think this is the broader challenge that I see with managing an agile project. There are lots of people who get hung up on the practices and kind of lose track of the actual goal behind that. I don't know about you, but I've been part of stand-ups that took more than an hour. What's the point? If it's not working, change it, don't do it, but don't just waste everybody's time. So I think this is one of the crucial challenges that people have trouble really applying agile, in their context, in their world, in what makes sense for their company.
Yeah, I was actually, as a bit of a fun thing, I was given a notebook over Christmas. Now, I tend not to use kind of physical paper that much these days, but I was given a notebook over Christmas. It was quite cheeky. On the front cover, it said notes from meetings that could have been an email. Okay, so it was really all about, kind of thinking, look, a stand-up is a stand-up is a stand-up. It's not meant to be, an opportunity to prolong and debate and, extend the scope into a whole variety of other things as well. So you're absolutely right. We need to live, the method, not just pay lip service to it. Okay, you're either in it or you're not in it. Dianne, your thoughts on this, and then we'll hear from Falko.
In implementing Agile process, the methodology usually includes new processes and procedures, and asking persons to change from what they're accustomed to these new processes can be one of the challenges. And also because teams are allowed to be very independent and develop their own milestones, sometimes the processes amongst teams themselves are different and not aligned and can cause problems for project implementation.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you're in the governance, if you're kind of managing a suite of projects, if you're at the program level or even at the portfolio level, this kind of way of working does present you with different sets of challenges for you to be able to, offer stakeholders, broader sets of stakeholders, an oversight, if you like, of what is actually happening on the ground. Falko, your thoughts on this, please.
Yeah, summing up a little bit what I heard from the other panelists and what I thought about is that you have two ways of working, at the Agile and the project, and you bring duplicate meetings, you bring duplicate roles, you bring lots of different mindsets into the work environment. And from my experience, the most common challenge is to decide for one of those on each of those levels. So kind of finding a way to have project managers and product owners set up. So you have either or same thing with meetings. You can have a weekly sync meeting on a project level kind of way, but then where is the value in having dailies? So to decide and to find the best way of working in the organization to go maybe either one or the other way, and not doing both and wasting time, wasting discussions on responsibilities, and getting both things running somehow without getting progress on the results, focusing on producing value.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. And some great answers there for very real challenges that we all have as we're starting to help mature, if you like. Many organizations have been working in an agile fashion for some time, but as we're trying to drive that maturity a little deeper and a little further across our organizations this year in 2023. So some great hints and tips there and some things to watch out for as well. So thank you very much indeed. And thank you to everybody who's online, who are starting to put in your live questions, which is really great. Suchitra, let's take our next question if we can.
We have a live question that's coming from Sarah Hazeldine. How do project, product, and engineering managers work together with clear roles and responsibilities?
All right. So this is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because firstly, we need to think about classically, what are those roles? So, Sarah, we may not necessarily, we don't understand your situation exactly, but we're going to start off kind of thinking about these roles and how teams might be working together. Dianne, why don't you start us off with your thoughts, and then we'll hear from Tomasz next.
So each portfolio would have their clear roles and responsibilities. However, in the agile transformation process, you would tend to find that principles and processes may change. So in the agile transformation processes, organizations need to look at their particular organization and see what works for them. So there's a quote that I saw where you leave room for failure, but you encourage creativity. So although you have your clear rules and responsibilities, you can encourage creativity while factoring failures.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We might come back to that thought in a little while. Tomasz, what are your thoughts on this? And then we'll hear from Johann.
Following up on this transition period challenge, is that people, when they were working in the previous setup, they have some assumptions in the mind what their role is. For example, project managers versus product managers versus engineering. What I do usually, starting the transition process, I organize the roles and the responsibilities workshop, where we can obviously show to people what are the roles and responsibilities in new setup, but then also get the buy-in from them and get understanding. So we can basically talk about that. So instead of just giving the description of the new roles and counting on people that they will, read it and follow it, I try to involve them to create the list of responsibilities. Obviously, it needs to be aligned with the transformation strategy, but it is important to have people not only understanding new roles, but also owning it and having the buy-in to that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Johann?
I want to take a slightly different approach. I mean, strictly speaking, if you're a purist, there's no such thing as a project manager in Agile, because people who's doing the work is managing the timelines and the work and the delivery. So that's basically the engineering manager or the team of developers that's actually doing the work with the product manager or product owner, and there is a difference, sort of giving direction. Now, that makes it quite challenging because it's a big departure from a traditional way of getting things delivered. But because the people doing the work now take accountability for the work that they deliver, and the person representing the product or the customer sort of is the quality insurer of making sure that the right work is done. Work do get delivered, and it gets delivered on time when needed, and it creates value and all that good stuff. The thing that I don't like about the word project manager in this context is that project managers traditionally are people who check other people's work. Yeah. Now, if you look at the different agile methodologies, some of the roles of the agile facilitator and coach and whatever is called a project manager. But we need to realize that the job is far from the traditional project manager job.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I agree with you. I think it is different, okay? And to that point, one thought for folks, if you're available tomorrow, now I know that this is going to be recorded and it will be released in the future, but tomorrow there is a registered event that APMG is hosting. All right. So you do need to follow the QR code that's on the screen. You need to go over to our website and just register yourself. If you register yourself, you'll definitely get a copy of the recording. It's an interview between Richard Farrow, our CEO, and Andrew Craddock, who I think is the kind of architect, all right, of the kind of technical lead, if you like, on a new product, which is called Agile PM for Scrum. So the idea is not so much that there's a project manager per se, but the methodology of agile project management, if you're using it in a Scrum environment, it brings these two worlds closer together. So this is a one-on-one interview between Richard Farrow, the CEO of APMG, and Andrew Craddock, who is the lead architect on Agile PM for Scrum, talking, and I'm sure, Johann, they're going to be touching on exactly the points that you've made, and also that Tomasz and Dianne have as well. So hopefully, Helen, that will also add some value into your considerations about how do you get these different roles truly kind of working together to the same ends. So thank you very much indeed, and a great segue into that. So do pop over there if you're interested and register yourself so that you can join in. Very good. Suchitra, let's move on if we can, and we'll take our next question.
We have a question from Cindy. Can a project be totally agile, or is it an agile mindset to project implementation?
So this is quite a good way, isn't it? Let's kind of build on that, because Johann, it sort of really does encapsulate some of what you were saying just before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the mindset is more important than anything else. And if you bring it back to what I said in the beginning, for me, agile is more continual improvement than project. That makes it even more important that you've got this right mindset. One must bear in mind that all of this stuff actually comes from lean. So agile started the ideas in agile started in the lean community, where people take accountability for the work that they do, and they constantly make it better.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Dianne, your thoughts? Then we'll hear from Falko.
So the agile mindset to project implementation looks at some of the tenets of understanding, collaboration, and being adaptable to change. So in your approach to project implementation, once you utilize that mindset, your project can be agile.
It's kind of chicken and egg, this really, isn't it? I'm not sure that you can have kind of one without the other. Falko, your thinking, please. Then we'll hear from Luca.
Okay, I'll add on to that thought. Just if you see a product development as a project, then this can be agile.
Yes, that's a good way to look at it. Luca, your thoughts, then we'll come to Tomasz.
Yeah, so I guess two thoughts here. The first is that, yes, certainly mindset is the most crucial thing, because don't forget that you should also evolve your agile processes in an agile way. See what works for you, see what works for your product, and go from there. You can do everything totally wrong in the beginning. That's perfectly fine as long as you improve. What's the saying? Fall down 7 times, but get up 8 times.
That's absolutely true. Now we have just. I just want to interrupt you just for a moment because we've got a very large number of people viewing. Okay, and I'm really interested in their opinion on this. So I'm really going to do a shout out now for some follow-up question. All right, to this particular question, Luca. I don't want to interrupt your flow too much on this. All right, but let's kind of pick back up. But I do want the audience to kind of jump in on this because this is the heart of the matter. All right, this is right in the essence of whether or not this evolution in your organization is going to be successful, or if ultimately the host will reject the new way of working. All right, this is at the heart of it. So we need to hear your opinion. All right, we need to ask the questions that you have in your minds. Today, you're sitting watching this and you're thinking, hang on a minute, this is not my organization. I have this problem, I have that problem, and so on. All right. So, Luca, just to come back to you before we finish with you, in reality, when you're consulting, are these the kinds of challenges that you're hitting day by day?
Oh, very frequently. So I've come to the impression that the controlling department, the financing department, is the biggest danger to Agile. Not because the controllers are somehow bad or stupid or don't know what Agile is all about, but just because they are concerned with managing risk. And if we are changing our approach to risk management, if we are applying Agile principles, then we owe it to them to explain to them how risk is still adequately managed and how they are involved in that process. So I think that is absolutely crucial.
So it's a broader education thing. It's a change management kind of concept where we need to educate and inform and engage, a broader group of people, not just those
Definitely.
who are, day to day kind of building a new solution. Thomas, your thoughts, please, and then we'll come back to Johann.
I like, Nick, what you said about the change management, because running the agile transformation is running actually the change of the mindset that we have, and every one of us was talking about this mindset. What I would like to add to this discussion is that sometimes people say that, okay, from day one, projects will be agile in our company, or we'll be developing products in an agile way. And sometimes it means chaos. People sometimes use agile word to describe the chaos that they have. So I'd like to point out that we do need to have some governance and principles that make sure that we follow the agile processes. Like there are a lot of agile processes and practices described, like Agile PM, for example. So we need to ensure that we have some norms that we follow, not we are just chaotic and excuse ourselves saying, oh yeah, we are agile. So that's my view on that.
It is really true, isn't it? And I think it's quite interesting, because if you think about, people talk about the culture of an organization, and for me, the culture is when you know that agility is surfacing in real behaviors, all right, day to day, then you're starting to develop the agile culture, because you can observe it and you can see it in action. Until then, it's like the traditional, thinking that an idea is just an idea until you express it to somebody else. And when you express it to somebody else, you then have to start to begin to explain it. And it's only really when you implement it that it becomes innovation, right? So we have to be able to walk the walk as well as just talking the talk, I guess. Johann, you wanted to come back in on this.
I think it's important to also recognize, Peter Drucker said, what gets measured gets done. And to a large extent, behavior depends on the metrics that we use within the organization, because that's a tangible way that the organization tell people this is what we expect from you. The reality is that if you really want to do work in an agile fashion, you need to measure different things. Different things are important. It's not whether you stick to the budget. It's not whether you stick to the timeline. It's about how much value have you created for the customer, how engaged you are with the customer, how do you enable the organization to grow and achieve their goals and objectives. And those are much more difficult things to measure. And And to say this is about organizational change management is spot on, because it basically means a different way of thinking and then a different way of acting in the organization.
You're absolutely right. And running workshops, helping, facilitating that kind of discussion at a senior leadership level, at a C-suite level, is very, very important. Otherwise, you have this, it's almost like a glass ceiling. You have a separation layer between the agility of an organization and the way in which that organization is actually trying to measure itself. Because if the way in which it measures itself is in the traditional fashion, then that is going to cause all kinds of problems as you start to roll up and aggregate the progress that you're making in different projects. So really good points. Thank you very much indeed, panel. Suchitra, we do need to move on. Time is pressing. So let's take our next question, if we may.
Your question from Kelly. Do you have any advice for how to navigate funding for an agile project, given the iterative development and changing priorities?
All right. So thinking about funding, that takes us back into the world of finance. Johann, why don't you start us off, and then we'll hear from Luca.
Yeah, and this is one of the changes that needs to happen within the organization. Yeah, we tend to fund verticals within the organization. So there's a silo with a budget. If you really want this to work, you fund your products. And the people doing the work get the resources from that product budget in terms of the way that they contribute and create value for that product's development. So that's a major shift in terms of thinking and doing and looking at your finances.
It certainly is. And it's quite interesting when you try and do this in the smallest of businesses through to the largest multinational enterprise. There's a different kind of approach that may be needed, depending on the size and the scale, the nature of the organization. Luca, your thoughts on this, and then we'll hear from Tomasz.
Yeah, I have to say, I very much agree with Johann. It really... That's the thing about Agile, right? It is a change that encompasses the entire organization. You may be thinking that you can get away with just agilizing your IT department or something like that. Well, you can't. You need to also take into account how are decisions made within the organization, how is financing organized within the organization, et cetera, et cetera. And so just like Johann and also Tomasz have been saying, you can't continue to fund, I don't know, milestones or traditional contract type scenarios. You need to move towards funding the organization that creates value, that creates products for your customers, so that you preserve that elasticity that you need, because you're living in this dual risk of product uncertainty and technical uncertainty. So you're not helping anyone by nailing down requirements before you absolutely must.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because if you think about it on one level, all right, if you're working internally, let's imagine that we're in an organization that has some money, there's some activity and so on, then the finance team will be used to considering work in progress, will be used to putting a value on effort expended so far. They'll be used to tracking, if you like, the progress towards a goal, even if you've not actually reached that goal fully so far. There is a view on how you do that, and it's fairly well established. Now, if you take this externally then, and you're trying to raise money in a bond market to fund a public-private partnership, for example, for a service-led PPP, which is all about delivering healthcare in an agile fashion to an audience which have had very little access to that healthcare to date, that represents an education challenge on an entirely different kind of level, as you try and bring these organizations together who have very strict controls over what their money is used for and at what point that funding is actually released, and so on and so on. So it's a fascinating area, this whole area of, how do you navigate your way through the very traditional world of project finance and, milestone payments and these kinds of things across to a more agile approach. Tomasz, your thoughts on finance and navigating your way through that?
I would advise you, Kelly, to use this argument of changing priorities and basically show the example to the finance guys. Hey, would you like to have a waterfall project costing £1 million, for example, lasting 1 year with no results at the end because we'll cut this project in the middle of the project? Or would you like to run iterative development, agile project, maybe more costly, but when you would like to cut it off in the middle, you will have something tangible at the end to use it somewhere. So I would advise to use practical example.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And engage with the finance team early is the right way to do it. And the more familiarity that you have and the closer proximity, the better you're going to be able to deliver on that. Dianne, final thoughts on this before we move on?
So finance is a key factor for project implementation. So one tip that I can offer is to align your project with your organization financial performance goals. So once there's an alignment, there can be a better justification.
Yeah, and I've always found the most senior people in the finance function the most open, actually, to having a grown-up conversation about this kind of thing, because they're used to dealing with things when it doesn't quite work out as you think. If you think about the financial heartbeat of an organization and your budgetary cycles and so on, you're trying to predict 15 months or more ahead of real time what's going to happen. And life, rarely do you get that right. And when you do get it right, I would say it's more by coincidence than necessarily by design. If you're within plus or minus 10% or whatever the variance rate or the confidence range is going to be, then different matter. But if you're spot on a number, well done. But it may not always be down to the delivery side of the organization. It may also be down to the goal setting as well. All right, excellent. Let's move on if we can. Suchitra, we'll try and fit in one or two more questions. What have we got next?
We have a live question from Daud Zibanda. Can Agile be used in a process improvement project?
Okay, Luca, start us off.
Well, I guess it must. You're starting with something and you're trying to iterate your way to something better by some measure. So yes, I absolutely say it not only can, but should be used to guide your process improvement.
Thank you so much. Very clear torch bearing there for you. And Johann, your thoughts?
Yeah, remember I said that the Agile, all of the stuff in Agile actually comes from Lean. And what is Lean other than that? It's an Agile way of improving the way that you do stuff constantly and iteratively. Absolutely.
You're so right. That whole Lean approach is I would say anyway, from a kind of heritage point, certainly philosophically, I would say it's the ancestor of the way in which Agile works for sure. And in real life, works very well together. So if you've not yet extended your reading into the world of Lean, I would really recommend it, because they often, some of the Lean books and the Lean methods and so on, they give you the sentences to use. They give you the approach to questioning. They provide you with that little bit of confidence to be able to go and find out a little bit more, discover a little bit more, and draw that into your Agile work. So really, really recommend that. We might have some book recommendations coming up for you in the closing remarks. Suchitra, we are running out of time, so I think we're going to take one more question, if we can, please.
Question from Stuart in Manchester. If you were to suggest a key skill from your experience that is critical to managing successful projects, what would it be?
Interesting. So skills. Tomasz, start us off, then we'll hear from Dianne.
For me, flexibility is the crucial part, not only in Agile project, but in any kind of project that you manage. Be flexible and be open to react on the change. If change is happening, not sticking to the plan just because this is the plan, but adjust it accordingly.
Thank you very much indeed. Flexibility. Dianne, a key skill?
So one of the key skills can be communication and building and developing your listening and reflective listening skills so that you communicate more with your customers and understand exactly what they want so you can meet their needs.
Such an important thing, isn't it? It's particularly in January. Always good to be reminded about improving our listening skills, and most certainly correct. Thank you very much indeed. Johann, your key skill, please. Then we'll hear from Falko.
I'll add to Dianne and say the ability to build trust between the parties, especially in an agile type of context, because there are a lot of uncertainty in the beginning, and we need to trust each other to make this work.
Really good commentary there. I totally agree with that. Thank you very much indeed, Johann. Falko, your thoughts?
Well, I think one of the Scrum values, focus, is a key point here. You need to focus yourself on what you want to achieve. You need to get focus in the team that's implementing it, and therefore you need communication, as Dianne said. You need flexibility, as Tomasz said, to always change to the most valuable or most important point that you can achieve at the moment in time.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Panel, I would add to that, I suppose I would put in situational leadership. Now, what do I really mean by that? It's the ability, if you're managing, a successful project, you need to reflect on your leadership style, and it needs to vary given different situations that you're going to face, whether that's based on the pre-project phases that you'll be involved with, that kind of work, or during the project execution, or beyond the project into the benefits realization. You need to think about your own leadership styles and how that might need to flex a little in order to get the very best out of the work that you were doing and on behalf of the team that you were leading. So very good. Wow, what an interesting exercise that we've had today in the middle of January, in the middle of the month in which we all set ourselves new goals, new directions, new ways of doing things and try and improve ourselves. Some fantastic advice and counsel. So let's hear some closing remarks now from our panel, if we can. On reflecting on this particular episode. Dianne, why don't you start us off, and then we'll hear from Tomasz next.
Thank you, Nick. So a very interesting episode and show as usual. And from every episode, I always learn something from my fellow panelists. And today from Johann, he would have introduced the concept of organizational change management in managing agile projects. So for me, that was a learning. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Dianne. Tomasz, and then we'll hear from Falko.
I really appreciate this conversation today because I see that nowadays we are talking more and more about Agile. There are a lot of different topics, but this one, I would say, in Poland is early morning today on Monday, and I would say that was espresso of Agile knowledge that I would get from all the panelists and from Munich. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Tomasz. We value your contribution equally strongly as well. Falko, please, and then Luca.
All right. Thanks for inviting me again. It was a funny and interesting session today, getting all the views on Agile and project management in place. I think keep in mind that there are two mindsets that might collide, and that there are duplications sometimes in roles, and meetings try to keep a way of duplicating things, and focusing on value is a good start.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm all for reducing duplication of effort. All right. It's like there's a fantastic Dilbert series of cartoons. Of course, many of our audience are far too young to remember Dilbert, but I can remember Dilbert. And there's some lovely ones around duplication of effort, as two project managers announce projects to reduce duplication of effort, and then they look at each other. So I totally agree with that. Thank you so much indeed. Luca, your thoughts, and then we'll hear from Johann.
Yeah, I have to agree with all the people before me. This was a really interesting and refreshing conversation. One thing that stands out to me as I reflect back on it is that nobody here got hung up on any specific techniques, any specific approaches or anything like that. It was really about the mindset, really about thinking about your work in the right way. And then doing the work in the right way will almost naturally follow.
It's certainly true, isn't it? You know, the more dogmatic we are, the more almost religious we get on a particular way of doing anything, the less likely it is that that is going to be able to leverage the talents of a wider and growing audience who might be interested in it. So it's very true. You know, stick with the high ground, stick with the philosophical approach, and you're more likely to be able to deliver success. Johann, your thoughts for today's episode?
Yeah, I normally end with a quote. And today I want to say, in the book Agile, A Manager's Guide to Creating Value with Scrum, I think in chapter 2, there's an interesting back and forth conversation about people opposing working in a different way. And that's afraid of this thing that, you don't have timelines and deadlines and stuff like that. I'll do an extract from that chapter and make it available to the audience through APMG. It's the first time I'm quoting myself.
That's very true. You invariably provide us with a quote from a historical character or a philosopher or or an author and so on. So it's very rare that you do actually quote yourself, but I think it has real merit on this occasion. So just this once, it's absolutely fine. So thank you, Johann. So that's really great. And Suchitra, well, welcome back. We had a roar through, I think, this particular episode. Your thoughts on today?
I agree, Nick. It was an amazing episode, and I enjoyed listening to all the panelists sharing their advice. And just to tell our viewers that you can also listen to our Level Up episodes on our podcast platforms as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Really handy when you're out and about doing different things. Maybe you're driving or, having a walk or walking the dog. In my case, that's generally where I listen to the Level Up episodes. I was listening to ideas for improving your career and, how to get your January New Year's resolutions actually embedded and working over the weekend. So it's a really great episode, actually. I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much indeed, Suchitra, as well. And thank you to everybody online who joined in today. We had a huge audience today and representing pretty much every continent from around the world. Although I am still looking for those ladies who are running the post office in Antarctica at the moment to come and join us on a Level Up episode, because we are yet to have anybody tune in from the continent of Antarctica. So I'm hopeful yet. There's a little bit of the summer left down there to run, so maybe they'll be able to tune in at some point. Who knows? Very good. Now then, looking forwards then, over on our website, of course, you can search for the answers to all of the previous questions. It's an amazing resource. There's thousands of questions and hundreds of experts for you to link up with and build your network. Don't forget that you can listen, as Suchitra mentioned, to the audio versions on your preferred podcast platform as well. Do take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe these videos, please. It doesn't cost you anything, but it really does help build community. And importantly, it helps new people discover the value that you personally are enjoying. So that's what that is really all about. Now, looking forward, tomorrow, actually, at 3 p.m., as I mentioned a little earlier, APMG CEO Richard Farrow is interviewing Andrew Craddock, who is the product architecture lead for Agile PM for Scrum. It is a free event, but just jump over onto our website and register yourself for that one. This Friday on Level Up, we're going to be looking at careers in project management, and in particular, how to become a project management manager yourself before moving on Monday to look at building cultures of collaboration. Subscribe to the show. We'll email you a personal summary of what's coming up and how you too can join us here on the panel and level up your career in 2023 with APMG. So thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you.